Hello and welcome to Hot Issues. This week we are taking a look at the National Service Scheme. What is it about? Is it a scheme meant to provide some temporary employment to students of the tertiary level, 18 years and above? Is it a scheme that is meant to instill a sense of patriotism and nationalism in the young people of Ghana? Of course, you also do know about the scandals which have hit the National Service Scheme. What is being done about these scandals? What systems are we putting in place in order to ensure that they do not reoccur? Welcome to Hot Issues. Hello and welcome back to Hot Issues. And as I indicated from the very beginning, we are taking a look at the National Service Scheme this week. There are several issues. What was the purpose of the National Service Scheme? Is the legislation setting it up adequate? Can we improve the National Service Scheme? What about the scandals that have plagued it? What are we doing about it? What about the controversy with NASPA and so on? And we are all very, very privileged today to have with us the Acting Executive Director of the National Service Secretariat, Dr. Michael Kpessa Whyte. So you're welcome.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yes, sir.
Honor.
The National Service Scheme, first of all, what is it about? Why was it set up?
Well, thank you. And I think that the National Service Scheme was set up for a number of reasons. But primary among those reasons is to galvanize young people and allow them to use their talents, energies, and expertise in the manner that contributes to advancing the socio-economic development of the country. How
successful have we been so far?
Well, that's a very important question. Unfortunately, the National Service Scheme, as far as my recollection of files are concerned, there hasn't been any empirical studies to show that the intent of the act has been achieved. But on the surface of it, beyond the lack of scientific research, I believe that if you look at it in terms of providing a space for young people to reflect upon their career options and also moving on into the world of work or moving on into the larger world ahead of them, maybe it has provided some respite. But against the background of its primary purpose of nation building and uniting the country and exposing us to the diversity and the beauty in our cultures across the country, maybe not, because over the years the scheme has been confronted with people wanting to be posted to their places of comforts. And even if you look at some of the ethnocentric comments that oftentimes have surfaced in our body politic, clearly indicates that national service is really lacking, and we need to really focus it in a manner that actually makes us feel that we have a common interest, and we need to focus on achieving that common interest.
Is the absence, or if you like, lack of empirical study, to establish the benefits or otherwise of the scheme, not a major problem?
It is a major problem. This scheme had been existing since, I think, 1978, and then later on in the 80s, you had the National Service Act. And I am surprised that even among our universities, university graduates, among our think tanks, and so on and so forth, there doesn't seem to have been any major national study to actually evaluate, review, and assess the impact of the National Service Program across time and space within the country. And I think it's a major defect for anybody who is in my position right now, because you want to quickly review whatever study there is and see how best you can retool things going forward. There is none. And so it is one of the key things we are considering, that, look, we need to engage academia and see those colleagues in academia who are interested in issues relating to youth in national development, and see how we can develop some collaboration and ensure that there is some research, ongoing research, either a time series or a snapshot study that gives us a sense of what we can do differently to ensure that our young people feel a sense of pride in being a Ghanaian.
Well, the scheme has been in existence for close to 30, more than 20 years.
Absolutely.
Couldn't we just take the life of young people as a yardstick? I mean, more and more Ghanaian young people are not speaking the local languages. More and more Ghanaian people are not proud of Ghanaian clothing. More and more Ghanaian young people are not eating Ghanaian foods. I mean, they're all graduating and rushing abroad and so on. Are those not indicators that something may be wrong with the scheme and its orientation?
Absolutely. I think those are all indicators that as far as making young people proud of our country, those are indicators that we need to really take a second look at the national service. Plus the fact that if you look at it in its current form, even though the Act says 18 years and above, in its current form, and that has been the case for some time, the scheme had essentially focused on only young people who are coming out of our tertiary institution, and that's a very small fraction of the larger number of young people. And that focus of young people, that focus on young people coming out of tertiary institution, has also somehow created the impression that national service is all about a place where you can get a job quickly and then move on with life. So the whole idea of nation building has more or less been subordinated to other personal and individualistic needs going forward. And that is where the point you make about young people more or less now moving into out of the school, traveling abroad, less people taking pride in our local languages, even working in our local clothes and so on and so forth are concerned. I think that these are all dents on the image of the scheme. It would have been better to look back now and say, out of the national service scheme, we have a much more enthusiastic, much more devoted, much more committed young people who are also grown into full-fledged adults, and that the future of this country looks brighter 20 or 30 years down the line than it was before. It doesn't seem that we can confidently say that, and I think that the national service scheme fully need to square up to look itself in the mirror and say, you know what, maybe we need to kind of re-strategize, refocus, and then move the scheme in a manner that will give young people hope and be proud to that they are Ghanaians.
Shouldn't we be coupling the provision of temporary jobs with a certain radical reorientation of the youth? I mean, can't national service personnel be made to study our history, to imbibe our cultural values and so on through an orientation program? Is that not possible? It
is possible. You know, because I think, I may be wrong, but perhaps one of the logics of making national service or limiting national service to young people coming out of the tertiary institution is the assumption that coming out of the tertiary institutions, they may have learned our history, they may have learned about our culture, they may have learned the things and the little tools, the basic tools we need to advance the nation forward. And that when you put them in the classrooms, in the villages, in the rural areas, and in the communities, they will in turn begin to impart some of the basic values that younger people need to also be able to appreciate not only the scheme, but appreciate the society we call Ghana, and then be proud of the future in which we are going. Unfortunately, again, without consciously coupling it with work, it appears to me that over time, that has become the situation. If you walk into the office now, based on the changes we have made in the posting calendar, and people know that we'll be posting service personnel early, there's a barrage of people who are coming in. I want this person to go to Valco. I want this person to go to Nelson Ghana Limited, Bank of Ghana, Ghana Commercial Bank. And I constantly keep saying, who do you want to go to the rural area? Because there is a young Ghanaian in a classroom somewhere who needs a teacher, a place where there is no teacher. For all you know, that school is even under a tree. And it is for these young people that those coming out of our tertiary institutions must go and give them also hope. For all you know, that young person is a potential doctor, is a potential engineer, is a potential anthropologist. We should be able to use the national service scheme to encourage that. But to do that also means we should be able to retell our story over and over and over and over again. The struggle for independence, the efforts in the early years to actually build this nation and make sure that we rise above our ethnic differences and see the commonalities or the common things we share as Ghanaians. I think all these things are getting lost, and it is really disheartening most of the time when you go into the tertiary institutions, you do an orientation for prospective national service personnel, and for the most part, 90% of the questions you get are all related to why do you post us to places where we cannot get job when we finish? Why do you post somebody to WOW? Or why do you when others are in Accra? what we are doing now is really to think of national service as a way of reconfiguring the mental disposition of young people. So we are developing, for instance, models where there will be a model like maybe national service in urban traffic management, or national service in community health, national service in educational support, national service in after schools program, where young people are really doing things that they naturally will have fun doing, but at the same time they are also holding the hands of other people in different communities and moving them along, showing them the way, whilst we all build a nation together. This country can only be built by us. It can never be built by anybody else. And this is a statement I repeat whenever I meet national service personnel or prospective national service, that if you expect anybody to come from somewhere to build this country for us, you lie. And if you don't like what you see now, then contribute to it so that your children will like what you have done. And so I believe that with the new narrative, hopefully larger numbers of people joining the narrative will help us to kind of ingrain in the mindset of our young people the need to kind of take a second look at national service and in the context of nation building.
But is the national service scheme not a reflection of the broader society? In other words, is it possible to build the kind of national service scheme that you're talking about in a society which is constructed on privilege and patronage?
That definitely is a daunting task for national service, for the national service scheme, because as I hinted earlier on, one would have thought that in the interest of the nation, if you were a bank manager, or you are head of an insurance company, or you are working as a chief director in a ministry, or even if you are a minister of state, you are in that position also with a sense of deep love for the country, and you spend some time also thinking about people who are in less privileged positions in other parts of the country, and that when somebody from your home is graduating out of the university and the state has given that person an opportunity to give off a little bit of his energy or talent, you would have actively encouraged that person that go out there and see other sides of Ghana. Unfortunately, we tend to rather sustain the privileged position. The person working in the bank wants the people in his immediate family background to also come and do national service in the bank. The people in the ministries are doing the same thing. The people in the insurance companies are doing the same thing. So we end up having to create a class society out of, this particular approach. And that in itself hasn't helped us. I recall telling a couple of young people recently that they must take active interest in doing their national service in the rural areas. Because if you were born in Accra, you schooled in Accra, you went to university in Accra, and you get big men and women to get you to be deployed or posted into Accra, you will grow up thinking that the whole of Ghana is like Accra. And you will be highly intolerant. You don't see why people from other parts of the country that you come into contact with have divergent views on the broader issues of the nation, and that you must spend some time going out of your comfort zone. And some of the stories people who have gone through the national service scheme bring up when we meet them, it's so beautiful. And I think that is why maybe some research would have helped. People tell you how they resisted being posted to rural communities. They eventually had no choice. They took it up, and some of them actually ended up settling in those communities because they saw many opportunities, not only to build the nation and contribute to the socioeconomic development, but opportunities that actually enhance their own career prospects as well. And as some of us always hold the view that the pursuit of collective interest is not in opposition to the pursuit of individual interest. And that when national service personnel or Ghanaians generally pursue or join the pursuit of collective interest, your individual interest is necessarily located in that collective interest. And I think that is the kind of direction that we should really be pushing institutions like the National Service, and especially other youth programs as well.
Well, the law setting up the scheme sets up an age limit of 18. Now, which 18-year-olds are you attracting? Every 18-year-old or some 18-year-olds? Which 18-year-olds are you attracting?
It is obvious, by now that we are only attracting some 18-year-olds, 18-year-olds and above. The intent of the law was to make national service compulsory for anybody who is 18 years old and above. And to the extent that the law even said, if you do not participate in the national service program, you cannot be employed, you cannot establish your own business, and so on and so on. So there were limitations, there were things that makes it impossible for you to more or less make career progressions. We have never been able to enforce it as a society, and we probably need to start thinking about it. But it is some 18-year-olds also, because it focused only on 18-year-olds that are and above that are coming out of our tertiary institutions. But you and I also know that the large majority of young people are those who are not able to get into tertiary institutions. And what it means is that in its current form itself, the National Service Scheme is creating a privilege enclave among the young people. It has more or less barricaded or closed the door. And what I'm excited about is that in more recent times, the president had been talking about the need to broaden this whole issue about youth service in Ghana, in the manner that captures young people who, for one reason or the other, may not have been able to enter tertiary institutions, and focus that side of the youth service on three main areas. Paramilitary training that gives them discipline, that instills the discipline in them and allows them to learn about the history of this country, the values of this country, and how to actually feel passionate about this country is one. Then the second one is to be able to give them basic skills like masonry, carpentry, dressmaking, and so on and so forth, so that when they are graduating out of the youth program, they know that they are facing the future more confidently. Then the third aspect of that program is, whilst in this whole program of paramilitary to youth service, they should also spend some time, maybe 18 months, to give a little bit of themselves to the country by way of participating in public works programs, like helping to clean the streets, sanitation exercises, going into the markets to help maybe the women to appreciate simple accounting practices, and so on and so forth. These are things that are currently being discussed, and hopefully it will be rolled out. And that in itself may end up opening up the scheme or the operations of our youth programs more broadly to a larger number of young people.
Well, many discussants of the National Service Scheme end up suggesting military training. Why military training?
Well, for a number of reasons. The idea of citizenship is not something that, good citizenship or responsible citizenship is not something that we acquire in a vacuum. It must be taught and learned. And especially in the age of information technology, where all manner of information is just being churned out there, it becomes even extremely difficult for a citizen to know what our national values are from what others are just spilling out there. But even outside of the information technology age and everything, our society has become just too indisciplined. That does not necessarily mean that the military training alone or paramilitary training alone would necessarily bring the discipline that we require. But at least the basic things about timeliness, the basic things about not throwing the garbage when you finish drinking your water or when you finish eating, those things I believe that are things that when young people are put together and taught in an environment of that nature may ultimately help in shaping their views about how our society ultimately needs to be. There are good examples from other jurisdictions. Recently, I was in Nairobi, and what they are doing is fantastic with their paramilitary training, for instance. The young people at the military camp who are held for 4 months and given that training, their tools at that training ground are essentially shovels and brooms. And when I asked one of the commanders, what do you use shovels and brooms here for? They say, by the time they leave this place in 4 months, they know that these are the things that form an essential part of what they need to do for the society. And so I think it's a question of how we configure it. We may be calling it paramilitary, but within that space, what is it that we want young people to learn so that when they come out of that, when we see them, we can see a big difference between them and others who never had a chance to go through that.
Shouldn't we be very careful not to confuse regimentation with discipline?
Absolutely. We should be very careful not to. There is some element of discipline that is embedded in regimentation. And I think at the end of the day, it comes down to how we design it. We will be creating the problem if we only focus on the regimented aspects of this whole exercise. But if we also incorporate into this exercise, models that allow for learning, hands-on teamwork operations, and so on and so forth, go into communities, and then we may be calling it paramilitary, but at the end of the day, it goes further beyond that.
There's an understanding that if we belong to a community, we rise or fall with that community.
Absolutely.
That should
Absolutely.
be the basic discipline.
Absolutely.
Hello and welcome back to Hot Issues, and we are in conversation with Dr. Michael Kpessa Whyte, who is the Acting Executive Director of the National Service Scheme. Before we went on break, we wanted to find out what the major difficulties of the scheme are. Sir, what are the major problems of the National Service Scheme?
Well, I think the problems can be categorized into those of administrative lapses, operational weaknesses. Perhaps we can also talk about the fact that the programs have lacked the needed focus, and of course also the projects that the scheme had embarked on for some time now also needed to be retooled in a manner that they do not necessarily become just commercial ventures, but they also provide training opportunities for young people to move out into the world and establish entities of their own. From the administrative point of view, I think that it is the administrative lapses, especially in the areas of auditing, that has created some of the problems that we have had to read about in the press in more recent times. Young people are deployed to various user agencies across the country, both public and private. And so it is important that in paying them, we put in place mechanisms that ensures that they do not go through inconveniences and that the state does not also suffer financial slippages. These issues are still under investigation, so it's difficult for one to go into detail. But as we have read in the press, there were quite a lot of financial hemorrhage in the scheme in the last several years, or if not a year. And it hasn't really helped the scheme very much, because then what it meant was that young people felt that they were taken advantage of. And so, yes, that was one of the major problems as far as administration is concerned.
Administration. People stealing money. They steal money everywhere. Why is it a particular problem for the National Service Scheme? I mean, there are ghost names in the Ghana Education Service, there are ghost names in the health service, there are ghost names everywhere. Why is this a particular, specific problem for the National Service Scheme?
I would basically say that it is the National Service Scheme's own that had come up for discussion, but it is also a particular problem for the National Service Scheme also, because when you begin with young people who become the future of tomorrow, they become the leaders of tomorrow, and right in the period of their inception, or what I call the rite of passage, within that particular moment already, they learn that names that do not necessarily constitute part of the National Service Program were added onto their particular list and were being paid, and that money, those monies were going into individual pockets. It is worrying, because then they begin to actually learn the wrong values. They begin to learn that, well, I mean, this is this rite of passage. The other side is just a place where you can do anything. At the end of the day, it's the nation that suffers. Beyond that, I think that the conversation must go beyond national service, really. National service is just a small institution that is under the Ministry of Education. And given what we know now, given what we have seen, and given what could have been prevented, it is important that the country begins to ask itself what is happening at other institutions under education, what is happening at other institutions under health, local governments, roads, and so on and so forth, so that collectively we will put our shoulders to the wheel and cleanse this system once and for all. It is Ghanaians who are, in these institutions, and why Ghanaians will do the same thing to the institutions that we built to ensure that we have a better country beats my imagination. I think that we must name and shame when the opportunity comes.
National service women and men have many complaints. One being that they are not paid on time, and some actually claiming that they don't receive their pay at all. What is the problem?
Yes, I think that when allowances delay, it's regrettable and it's not excusable, because when you send a young woman or a young man to a rural community with the objective that I'm sending you here, serve as the face of the state and help give life to some young people who are now growing up, and they are not being paid, or their allowances delay, then there is a problem for which, there should be no excuse whatsoever. However, there has been a perception in the last several years, which we are trying to correct, that once I'm posted, I should just be paid. We are trying to change that particular approach to looking at things now. The fact that we posted you does not necessarily mean that we are sure that every month you are at post. We will pay when we know you are at post. So what we have introduced is what we call the monthly duty reporting form. And with the monthly duty reporting form, we expect that by the 15th of the month, your supervisor at the place where you are doing your national service will sign that, yes, you are at post. And then you submit the form to the district director, who signs and subsequently forwards it all the way to the head office, puts all of them together, forwards it to the head office, which internal audit then uses to validate that indeed you were at post, and then you should be paid. We have explained this several times to personnel, to our officers, men and women who are manning the district offices. But somehow it appears to me that most people forget that it's a shared responsibility, that until the form arrives, we cannot pay. We've even heard rumors that they say, oh, the money is there, but we just took it to go and buy treasury bills and it's accumulating interest for us. I'm told that this is a year-on-year in rumor anyways. But I have been meeting with a number of national service personnel who are affected by this problem in recent time to explain to them that there are series of levels that perform their role in making sure that we pay them. And that if you, the individual personnel, do not take your monthly reporting form to your district director, others will be paid, that is those who have taken their forms there, and you will not be paid. The reason being that at head office where we authorize payments, we don't know that you were at post or not. At least now I think that message is sinking in. We have also appealed to user agencies that don't take the end of the month to mean 1st to 30th. If you sign somebody's form at the 15th, on the 15th of the month, well, you expect that the next 15th thereabout you will sign again. That in itself is 1 month. So now the conversation is going on, and hopefully it will be, this idea of delay in payments will be a thing of the past. To be honest with you, I am particularly sad that within the national service fraternity, anytime I go anywhere to meet service personnel or prospective service personnel, the conversation is about allowance. And I think this is a complete misplaced priority. National service must be about young people talking about, their expectations, their experiences, the challenges they face and how they traverse those challenges and so on and so forth. But it's like allowance, and to some extent, it is blamable on the delays and the processes. We are making every effort to cut down on all the various stages that create the delays and ensure that personnel are paid just about the same time public servants are paid. So that at the end of the day, when we meet service personnel, it must be a conversation about national renewal, responsible citizenship, and the contributions they are making to bring knowledge to young people in the rural areas or in communities where they otherwise lack teachers and nurses and doctors and so on and so forth. So that is in a nutshell. But especially with respect to January, we have just made the migration to the eSwitch platform, which was introduced largely to weed out the human interfaces at the regional and the district level. So personnel will be paid right from Bank of Ghana straight into their eSwitch account. Be it as the first one, there were a few issues that we encountered. Either the name of the personnel on our PV does not necessarily match the name of the personnel on his eSwitch card. For instance, if your name on our PV is Michael Kpessa, but on your card is Kpessa Michael, the eSwitch system will flag it and they will send it back to us to confirm that it's the same person. That, for me, is only a one-time problem. Once we correct it for the January allowances, subsequently we will not have to face the same problem again, and payments will flow much easier. It took us quite a number of, maybe a week or two to do January payment alone. As I speak to you now, we paid February for 4 regions yesterday, and we are likely to pay 3 more by close of day today. Those that we have not paid yet, it means we haven't received their monthly reporting forms yet. And as soon as we receive it, it goes to internal audit. We're going through the process, and then we pay them. But like I said, I would prefer that the conversation in the larger nationals around national service really talks more about the things that national service is established for.
Is this process you have described not necessarily cumbersome and difficult to implement? Imagine a national service person, in a remote village, in a district.
Yeah.
The supervisor has to fill the form and sign it.
Yeah.
Probably will take a couple of days to get to the district center.
Right.
It has to be verified by the district center, sent to the regional center, and then transmitted to the national center. Is this not a very cumbersome,
absolutely
process?
A cumbersome process. But
and then what does it say also about the drive towards decentralization?
It says a lot. In fact, I have had a cause to say, why is National Service actually standing aloof from the decentralization process? Why is National Service not integrated into the local government system? So that all these verifications will be done by an authority at the local government setting, and all we are told is, I can vouch that this person is at post, go ahead and make the payment, and we will take responsibility if audit later on finds out that the person is not at post. Somehow, National Service over the years seems to have moved itself and is now standing aloof of the overall, decentralization process. And it tells a lot about where we have to go, or what we must be thinking as far as decentralization is concerned. But the cumbersome process was introduced immediately following some of the things we have read in the press to make sure that we eliminate the ghost names that were in the system, because the ghost names, some of them were really not manufactured names. They were names of people who actually should be doing service but were not at post at all, but were finding themselves on the PVs or pay vouchers for payment. Now, we immediately now realize that that process of the form emanating from the individual to the district to the national to the regional to the national in itself is a problem. So what we are doing, yesterday we had a meeting with our IT team and said, look, let's have a system where we can actually be able to have these things done in real time. Our district officers should be able, before the end of the month, pick up these forms, because that's why they are there anyways, and then go online and in a system that we are developing, be able to verify that I can vouch that A, B, C, D are all at post. Our internal audit then takes that, processes it, and then we pay them. If we do that, it means that the monthly reporting forms will only remain at the district level. It will not come all the way up anymore. And that, I believe, will cut out a lot of this process. But like I said, the IT folks, I have basically spoken what I thought is an idea that can help solve what is currently a cumbersome process. The IT folks are trying to unpack that and see how best they can translate that into a solution that will be more efficient for our services to national service personnel.
How many people do you deploy at any given time? How many people are you deploying? I mean, this year you should be deploying very soon. How
Absolutely.
many people are you deploying?
I went to the scheme in October, and when I checked the statistics, the total number of individuals that the scheme generated PIN for to register to be deployed were about 99,000 last year. Out of the 99,000, when they submitted the PINs to these individuals, about 78,000 of them registered that they want to be deployed. And when those 78,000 were registered to be deployed and they were deployed, we noticed from the earlier statistics that came that about 65,000 thereabouts were the people who had reported, and this comprises of those who were deployed to private sector and those who were deployed to public sector as well. On the average, it's around 70,000 people that we are looking. As I speak to you now, we have generated PINs for 72,000 people, and just before I left the office coming here, I noticed that we have a couple more schools or universities that have also submitted their final year list for which we will generate PIN. So we are looking at on the average 70,000 people. And because the tertiary institutions are growing by the day, I mean, in this country, the numbers are also moving up and up. For me, the point is that it's a huge government money or state money that is being spent on this program. And we must all probably rally around immediately and find out and ask the question, is this program really serving the purpose? If it's not, what can we all do to make sure that an important program as national service actually contributes to nation building and national development? There are several places where we either go and hire people to do things when we could actually just draw from national service pool and then deploy the people, and then they are not paid anything extra because they are already on allowance. So I think that there must be a larger conversation around national service beyond me as an individual or the management of the scheme. The nation must take interest in this program.
Now, you're going to deploy an average of about 70,000 people. How do you decide that Amma should go to Bumprugu and Kwame should go to Ayawasu Central and so on? What is the mechanism for distributing people around the country, and how fair may that mechanism be?
Well, I mean, I think that's a very important question, and that's the question I have asked myself also. I haven't been part of previous deployments, and this probably will be my first deployment, and I've been asking that question. I do know that education takes a chunk of the national service personnel to fill in the teacher deficits across the country. And for that, maybe the rationale basically is, apart from the fact that you match schools with their specific areas of needs as far as the academic background of the personnel are, that is essentially to say we prefer to have somebody with a tertiary education in the classroom teaching than to have nobody at all in the classroom. The worst case scenario, I mean, between the two, I believe that any sane person will always choose having an adult in the classroom, having a conversation with young people, than to have nobody at all in the classroom. But the larger question about, I mean, the other areas that people go to, I think really is about also the choices they put on the form. Most of them, when filling the form has options about regions that you want to go into. And there are three choices: first, second, third choice. We try very hard to accommodate these places. Again, I noticed that the large majority of service personnel deployed last year find themselves in Accra. Well, not the majority, but a chunk of it is found themselves in Greater Accra region. About 37% of national service personnel were in Greater Accra region. When you do the graphs, you see the bar chart for Greater Accra rose very, very high, whilst the others are in the other regions. We think that in itself also is not necessarily the best. We should post to private sector by all means, but we should only post to the private sector after we have satisfied the needs of the public sector or the needs of the state. And I think that has been lost on us. The other thing that we have done to help make this process, to marry both the interests of the personnel and the question of fairness and this thing, is to develop models, which I spoke about earlier, about 12 different models that are on the form now. You tick what model you want to go into, and then we decide where those particular models are located. So if it's urban traffic management in Kumasi, or urban traffic management in Wa, or it's urban traffic management in Bupurugu, or it's rural, contributions to community development or rural development, we send you there, and then we hope that over time, doing by learning, we will perfect the system and get a much better results going forward.
Now, if I have a relationship with an institution, and I have the skills mix, which is relevant to the work in the institution is so happy with me because of that special relationship and so on. Is it wrong for the institution to specifically request for my services during the national service period?
It is not wrong. We accommodate that, but we don't encourage it, because encouraging it means that you are opening the system up for abuse. You have, unfortunately, some Ghanaians who will bring their nieces and nephews and brothers and sisters and tell you that, well, we have a working relationship with this person, we want you to. So we do accommodate that, but we don't encourage it. And we actually, even in the cases where we accommodate it, we try to do a little bit of due diligence to ensure that indeed this person has the skill, he has a relationship, and there must be some maybe past record of the person and this institution having engaged on a number of issues that makes the person go there. So even though we don't encourage it, I mean, we do have situations where some institutions come and say, I want this particular person because he's done some attachment with us, we've trained the person already, and we want the person to. But we make it clear to them that it's not about jobs, but we also understand your need, and that if you think that by the person coming there, he will contribute in a higher form to the overall socio-economic transformation process, that's fine. So we try to maintain a fair balance on this.
Should national service people be working always in the formal institutions? I mean, some time ago we heard about this maize farms that the service was interested in, voluntary work in construction and so on. Should they always be in formal settings?
I don't think they should be in formal settings alone. I think that recently I called one of our officials in the office, the head of estates, and I said, this national service, now why don't we have a pool so that there are some of these metal barricades in the streets that have, either fallen off or whatever the case may be. Let's get national service personnel, let's put our welding machines in the pickups, let's go on the streets and straighten these things up, because for me this is all national service is about. So the answer to that question is, they shouldn't really be working all the time in formal institutions. They should be on the field as much as they are in their offices as well. Unfortunately, the conception has been When I move out of school, I'm going to do national service in an office, and then from there I get a job and move on. We are trying to change that. It will take a larger conversation around these things to get people to understand.
Now, you look at our society and you see this Sanitation Week which has been introduced.
Which national service is actively involved.
And you find the president, you find citizens like the Asantehene, the bishops and so on, collecting garbage. You find the Voluntary Welcomes Association and very serious professionals, lawyers, doctors and so on, are soiling their hands. When you ask national service personnel to engage in some of this practice, they say, no, we've been to the university, we cannot. What is the problem?
I think it is a problem because there is a view that people going through the university are privileged, and they come out of that university and then they must move on to offices and buildings and so on and so forth.
Is this just a view?
Well, I think it's a view that has taken on a coat of reality to a very large extent. You won't believe the challenge we have in mobilizing young people, national service personnel, to join the national sanitation. Since it was introduced, we have made a commitment to be part of it and actively in region after region mobilize the personnel. Gradually, it's catching on. The first one in Accra was, a little disturbing. Very few of them showed up. Eventually, in Kumasi, it picked up quite well because the regional director and his district directors got involved and encouraged the personnel. We were thinking that national service personnel will embrace this as, yes, this is my movement to show to the country that, yes, we are there, and yes, this is something that we can demonstrate that national service is really keen in doing. It hasn't really been easy. But I think the philosophy should really be, let's continue to have a conversation, because there had been an earlier other subtle conversations that had created the impression that that is not a domain for people coming out of tertiary institutions. Within the tertiary institutions and outside the tertiary institutions, there must be a new conversation that actually makes people appreciate wherever they were. If you go to any of these so-called advanced industrialized countries, the greatest agricultural scientist is in the mud with his boots and everything. That is where he's actually putting his knowledge to real use. We must encourage scientists and doctors and engineers coming out of our district that being in blue-collar job is okay, but you may not necessarily be serving the nation to your fullest potential if you limit yourself to that alone.
Hello and welcome back to Hot Issues. We are in conversation with Dr. Michael Kpessa Whyte, Acting Executive Director of the National Service Scheme. And we are talking about everything about national service, recruitment, placement, problems, and so on. And just before we went in the break, I posed the question about the recent case of alleged corruption, the payroll scandal.
That's right.
What is being done about the payroll scandal?
Well, currently, as far as the scheme's payroll is concerned, we have taken a couple of measures to at least weed out what we consider to be the undeserving personnel or names that were being paid. And that was done through the earlier processes that we talked about, the cumbersome monthly reporting form, as well as the eSwitch platform that we have just rolled out. So to that extent, we can confidently say that now the ghost name era in the scheme is over, because the eSwitch works in such a way that every individual and his thumb, it's only your thumb that can allow you to access the money. So you cannot, and of course also to get onto the list means that we have generated PIN for you and you have gone through all the process properly. So I want to believe that we have brought some sanity into that and stop the financial hemorrhage. But on the other side, which is the second leg of your question that you asked much earlier, I believe the Attorney General's Department is in serious conversations with the investigators to ensure that the necessary legal processes are followed to build the docket that is required and ensure that whatever, or especially because my predecessor is in court, so I believe that they are building the necessary dockets to make sure that also is finalized at some point.
Mm-hmm. Are we sure that something is going to come out of this, investigation and possible prosecution? How sure are we?
We can only be optimistic. The president has done his job, which is as soon as he got wind of it, he authorized the investigations, and not only authorized the investigations, he also made sure that the issue is exposed, spilled out into the public space, so that everybody knows that this is an institution that is getting rotten, or that has gotten rotten, and he, the president, is really, upheld by that, and that living by example, he wants to make sure that he put it out there so that others would know that when they are also engaged in that, eventually they will be caught. So, to that extent, the executive had taken on that action. The executive is moving further to build a docket and go to court and so on and so forth. Now, it comes back to the question of shared responsibility. Will the judiciary also do its due diligence in the interest of the state and ensure that what is right and just is done? That, I believe, that will be left to the good wisdom of the actors within the judicial system. Like some of us always say, the fight against corruption and malfeasance is really a collective one. Some state institutions are limited in the extent to which they can go. When they finish, others have to take over. But if everyone will attend to their roles with due diligence and commitment to saving the nation from the rot, I believe that we will get what is deserved for the country. So we can only be optimistic.
Now, what is the relationship between the scheme and NASPA, which I suppose is the National Service People's
Personnel Association. Yes.
I don't like calling them personnel.
You like to call it National Service People's.
Yeah.
No, that's. I think it's been called personnel because in the earlier years they actually went through the paramilitary training. And so it was assumed that they were service personnel coming out of this thing. But I agree with you, whether it is people or personnel, it starts with a P, so it still takes the NASPA well and fine. I think that the NASPA had been in existence for a very, very long time. It was formed largely to serve as an umbrella welfare organization for the service personnel, and also to bring them together at the end of their service year so that they can fraternize and have fun and enjoy themselves and so on and so forth. Over time, I think at some point in time, it was becoming an albatross in the sense that it was individuals who hold the leadership positions were probably becoming unduly unfair to the management by allowing themselves to be taken advantage of by some political actors or partisan actors within our society. So for a very long time, NASPA basically went into hibernation. The institution collapsed as NASPA. Then I think in 2009, under Vincent Kwagbenu, it was revived again, just so the service personnel can actually, through themselves, have a voice that can give management some kind of feedback on the various operations of the scheme. And so there had been very cordial relationships. When I went in October, we've had a series of meetings. We talk about what NASPA can do to actually complement the efforts of management and so on and so forth. So to that extent, I think that the relationship has been good. You recall that in more recent times there was NASPA in the news in relation to management, and many of those things were very surprising to me. Surprising to me also because of what we know as far as the actors who were going around making the noise were concerned in their relationship with certain political parties that operate in this country. And it's very sad that young people at their present age will lend themselves to a political manipulation, as it were. But they have, the former executives of NASPA have gone to court to place an injunction on what I don't know. But when something is in court, as we all know, we are told that we should probably desist or be careful talking about it. So I wouldn't want to, go into the more recent things that have happened. But I can also tell you that at the Congress in whole, what did happen was when one of the executives was given a platform to address the delegates as an outgoing executive, he basically took the platform and basically lambasted, ran down the government and ran down the president. And I took the stage, and also I advised them that they must elect executives who will come and serve their interests. They must elect executives who will not come and sit in our office and go around the tertiary institutions and collect money from the prospective personnel that they will help them to be posted. And so I think those among them who knew themselves took offense, and that some of that is what has spilled out into the public domain.
Well, sir, thanks a lot for coming.
Thank you very much for coming. It's a pleasure for me, sir.
Well, viewers, you heard it all. Of course, this interview has come to you from the channels of TV3.